I'll be moderating the session. My name is Francis Dehun Lee. Just call me Francis. And welcome everyone to this very interesting session, I think, on peace process in the Korean Peninsula. We are one of the sessions in peace and security sections of Asia-Europe People's Forum 2021. And we also have Corazon, who is one of the organizers of this forum. Thank you very much. And let me introduce the speakers first. We were going to have 6 speakers, but unfortunately, Lisa Clark from IPB, International Peace Bureau, she had suddenly an urgent matter and unable to attend our session today. Very unfortunate. So we will have 5 speakers. Let me introduce briefly first the 5 speakers. First from Mongolia, we will have Ang Sai Khan, Zargal Sai Khan, and I hope you will be the first speaker. And following him, we will have Marie-Laure Boire from GPAC, Global Partnership for Prevention of Armed Conflicts. You are the second speaker. And then after that, we'll have Sung-uk Yoon from Korea, and he's also a peace ambassador from the Unification Ministry, and we will have him as the third speaker. And we are very happy to have our fourth speaker, Yoo Kyung-ko, she is consultant to WILF, Women's International for Peace and Freedom. And then finally, we have the final speaker and also organizer for this session. Thank you very much, Soo-young Hwang. She will be speaking for PSPD and also Korea Peace Campaign. So thank you for joining this session again. And I think the topic will be very interesting. We will update you on the current situation of Korea peace process and possible roles and expectations for European and Asian governments, as well as update on the initiatives and request of solidarity from civil society actors. That's our topic. So I will not spend more time. Each speaker will speak for about 10 to 12 minutes, I hope. And we will open the floor for general discussions. We expect your questions and opinions first to be recorded in the chatting box first. And if we have enough time, we will open the floor discussions later. But first, opinions and questions on the chatting box, please. And please mute your microphone so that the speaker can speak clearly and loudly. Now, may I invite Ang Sai Khan for the first input on this very important topic.
Well, thank you very much, Francis. It's always nice to see our old friends again. I think the persons who I see them on the screen are all that we know, and hope that we will have even more friends or people will be coming in to discuss and share their views on this issue. I'm representing Mongolian NGO Blue Banner. I would like to say a few words about the Blue Banner as well, because it's an NGO that was established in 2005, originally to help promote Mongolia's nuclear weapon-free status and support regional efforts to strengthen non-proliferation and nuclear disarmament. It established close relations with Northeast Asian peer organizations and has been working with them on Korean Peninsula related issues. At the national level, Blue Banner works predominantly with the young people to help them understand the intricacies of the issues connected with the Korean Peninsula, as well as promote young people's cooperation with youth organizations in the region. Blue Banner is one of the members of GPAC Northeast Asian Regional Network, and it is the 3rd time that Blue Banner is participating in the work of Asia Europe Parliament Forum, People's Forum. One may ask, what a small Mongolia and its civil society can offer or contribute. And it is important for me just to shed some light on that. The country maintains good relations, and it's very important, good relations with all the states of the region. It has no territorial or border problems with its neighbors and enjoys relations of traditional friendship with North Korea and is developing comprehensive partnership with South Korea. It promotes active foreign policy, following the saying, there's a saying in Mongolia that duck is calm if the lake is calm. That is, Mongolia's own security depends on regional stability and security. That's why we're trying to be as helpful and as active as possible. As a small country, it has no hidden political agenda regarding the Korean Peninsula and works to promote trust and bridge building. That's how we believe should be our contribution to this issue. Playing a mediating role, it organized bilateral meetings between representatives of North Korea with the US and Japan. And Blue Banner also organized bilateral meetings between business representatives of Japan with the North Korean business representative as well. And we were planning to hold another such meeting last year, but because of the pandemic, we were not able to do that. And now we're in the process of contacting both sides as well, and we'll try to be as helpful as possible in this. 1.5 track Ulaanbaatar dialogue is an initiative that our government has came up with in 2014, and we're trying to also encourage representatives of the region and of the US and of some international organizations to participate in their unofficial capacities, because that provides, I think, a very good atmosphere for people to exchange openly views on the issue. So this is also our contribution. In the nuclear area, Mongolia's nuclear weapon-free status is widely recognized, and it benefits from security assurances provided by the 5 nuclear weapon states to Mongolia, the P5. So we have been dealing with nuclear weapon states for over 2 decades. We have very good relations, though on many things we do not agree, but nevertheless, we have very good, established very good personal relations, and we're able to make sure that our problems are understood by the P5, and we try to understand the views and interests of the P5 as well. I think such an approach is very, very important, not only in Mongolian case, but in many other cases. So personal relations is very, very important. Mongolia's experts as IAEA inspectors have worked both in North Korea and Iran. So we have people, if need be, they can participate in future such activities as inspectors, because they have a lot of experience in that sense. Also, Mongolia maintains 4 certified CTBTO primary, seismic, infrasound, radionuclide, and noble gas stations. That means whatever happens in our region, the CTBTO can get full information from our side. And that's what we've been doing that. Even we think we're one of the first to have informed the CTBTO about the 6 nuclear weapon tests in North Korea. So this is just, I'm trying to tell you that we're trying to be as helpful as possible. And it's not only just our ideas, but what we're trying to do is to share our experience, including with the inspection and so on and so forth. As to Blue Banner, it believes that the Korean issue needs to be addressed politically and not through force or pressure that would only lead to mutual suspicion and tension. And we all see that we're becoming also, the people I think know quite well that force will not force to change the positions of states. So what we try to do is to accentuate the positive, whatever is positive, and work constructively, which is very important, since optimism generates ideas and energy to look beyond narrow national interests than approaching issues from, let's say, who wins, who loses, from the zero-sum game solutions, or when approach the issues from the worst case scenario. That I don't think is not very helpful in this area. The 2018 US-North Korea summit has shown that there is political interest on both sides to denuclearize the peninsula. However, and we all know that, to move forward, they need to clearly define the meaning of denuclearizing and start serious negotiations to address it. So far, we don't see that because the positions of the two sides are diametrically different. And as of today, there is still a wide conceptual gap between the approaches. Unless this issue is addressed, there will be just standoffs. One side saying one thing and the other side saying something else. So I think the conceptual approach is very, very important if we want to have a progress in negotiations and talks. Cooperation and input of other states, parties to the former six-party talks is very, very important, especially the participation, active participation of South Korea. And I think South Korea is doing very positive things, trying to engage North Korea in bilateral relations, which is very, very important because it's a very important part of the larger picture. So far, the positions of states of six-party talk are still rigid, with the expectation, perhaps, that one of the parties would make unilateral concessions. And that will not happen. People know this. So in such a situation, civil society organizations can play a useful role, like it was played by ICANN and International Campaign to Ban Landmines, because they can be very active, not only among civil society organizations, but also work with governments and states that have an open mind and are trying to contribute to addressing this issue. So likewise, cooperation of regional NGOs with interested governments also could play a useful role in addressing the Korean Peninsula issue. In that case, GPAC, International Peace Bureau, and this AEPF can play a practical role with their rich experience and outreaches. We know that GPAC and IPB have a lot of experience, but I think the participation of AEPF will be very, very useful as well because they have a very broad membership and support. In 2015, GPAC Northeast Asia has launched the Ulaanbaatar process with participants of both Koreas, China, Japan, Russia, Mongolia, and the US. It serves as a regional track 2 dialogue mechanism that provides political space for its participants to consider and discuss issues of common interest and of common concern, and promote cooperation by doing so, strengthen the role of civil society organizations in this. Because there is a voice, yes, we can hear voices of civil society organizations, but they are not, so far they cannot affect the positions of governments. So I think civil society organizations should work together and see how we can do that in that sense. High on the agenda of Ulaanbaatar process are the situation on the Korean Peninsula and promoting establishment of a nuclear weapon-free zone in Northeast Asia. These are two important issues. The third issues will also decide whether it is a cooperation, economic cooperation, gender issues, and so other issues. But two important issues, constant issues, are the situation on the Korean Peninsula and promoting the establishment of Northeast Asian nuclear weapon-free zone. Finally, to contribute to civil society common efforts, Blue Banner has undertaken recently a study on the Korean Peninsula and believes that denuclearization of the peninsula needs to be part of a broader approach to regional security and to Northeast Asian nuclear weapon-free zone. We believe that conclusion of an international treaty whereby two Koreas and Japan, these three countries, would not have nuclear weapons, while the three nuclear weapon states of the region, meaning Russia, China, and the US, would provide to them legally binding assurances. That is very important. That's the basic philosophy of nuclear weapon-free zones. You promote, you discuss among each other, let's say, the countries of the nuclear weapon-free zone that you will not have nuclear weapons, and they have their own, let's say, security mechanism. At the same time, the nuclear weapon countries would provide security assurances. In this case, I think it is very important because Russian and Chinese security assurance given, let's say, to Japan and to South Korea would be very important. And on the other hand, US security assurance to be provided to North Korea would be also very important. And there's another layer whereby the Russia and China that have been allies of North Korea would make sure that that US security assurance would be viable, because all these three countries are members of the Security Council. I think that is a very important issue that we should have in mind. And of course, content-wise, the treaty should also have some provisions about economic issues. It's very important. Economic issues, it's not only the question of Security Council, let's say, resolutions, but also to provide, let's say, very important economic incentive for North Korea, which is very important. We call this as an international mini Marshall Plan. You know, the Marshall Plan at the end of World War II that helped, I think, Germany and many other countries to regain their economic, to rebuild their economy. So I think this is a very important issue.
Yes. 1 minute, please. Yes.
Okay, this is an important issue because I'm saying that it should not be a US unilateral, let's say, mini Marshall Plan, but international, including involving South Korea, Japan, European Union, Southeast Asian countries, even Mongolia can provide some kind of assistance. So that would be, I think, a win-win situation. On 30th of September of last year, an international policy forum of NGOs was held on this issue, and we have decided to establish a working group to see how what can be the input or, let's say, assistance of NGOs. So with this, I would like just to end my statement. I'm very glad to hear that Francis has said that you will have some persons to update on the latest developments connected with this issue. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Eng Sai-san, and very sorry for the limited time. I think you have highlighted very well from your rich diplomatic experience, the necessity of political resolution and the work of point 1.5 and point 2 track diplomacy initiated by Mongolian government and civil society. Thank you very much. With the permission from Marillo, I would like to go back to the agreed order of speakers. I understand that the Korean inputs will come at the first part so that we can have a balance with other
Of course, no
partners.
problem.
Thank you very much. So with your permission, I'd like to invite Yoo Kyung-ko from Korea to give your second input. Thank you.
Thank you, Francis. Hi, nice to see you all, even if virtually. And thank you for inviting me to speak at this webinar. As Francis introduced at the beginning of the webinar, I'm a consultant for the WILF, Women's International League for Peace and Freedom, and the transnational woman-led Korea Peace Now campaign, which was launched in 2019 to end the Korean War with a peace agreement. May I share my screen to show some? Okay. Is it good to see that? Okay, it works. Thank you. Yeah, Korea Peace Now published the Path to Peace report in February of this year, which makes the case that a peace agreement would lower tensions and make room for progress on issues such as improved human rights and denuclearization. I'm also a standing executive committee member of the Korea Peace Appeal campaign, which was launched in July last year. I think Soo-young will introduce the campaign in detail. I just would like to invite you to join the campaign and sign the appeal. In 2018, there were several summit agreements between the US and the DPRK, North Korea's official name, and between the North and South Korea for the denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula and establishing a peace regime. Since then, however, the Korea peace process has been at an impasse. While progress in inter-Korean relations had created a historic opening for talks between the US and the DPRK in 2018, the US's policy of maximal pressure and its denuke-first approach undermined inter-Korean cooperation and the implementation of the summit agreement, including the military agreement for disarmament between the two Koreas. The Moon Jae-in administration has been criticized for failing to make progress in inter-Korean relations in the face of US intervention via the UN command, which obstructed
Your microphone is off. Yoo-kyung, your microphone.
하나도 안 들렸어요?
한 10초 정도 안 들렸습니다. 10초.
Okay. Yeah. The Moon Jae-in administration has been criticized for failing to make progress in inter-Korean relations in the face of US intervention via the UN command, which obstructed the implementation of the inter-Korean agreement. In this context, President Joe Biden took office in the United States in January. Competition between the US and China is intensifying, increasing concerns about possible military tension and a new Cold War in Northeast Asia. Tomorrow, there will be a ROK-US summit, the first in-person meeting between President Moon and President Biden. As the Biden administration has completed its review of its the PRK policy, many Koreans are paying attention to the summit with expectation of positive and meaningful outcomes for peace on the Korean Peninsula. According to the spokesperson of the White House, the Biden administration's DPRK policy will not focus on achieving a grand bargain, nor rely on strategic patience, but will be a calibrated approach to make practical progress. In a special address on May 10th, President Moon welcomed the Biden administration's policy direction to achieve complete denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula through diplomacy with a flexible, gradual, and practical approach, and by building on the US DPRK Singapore Declaration as a foundation. President Moon said he will do everything he can to restart and advance the Korea peace process even beyond his remaining term in office. He emphasized that the time for long deliberations is over and it's time to take action. But we have not yet heard what concrete steps the Biden administration will take to break the current stalemate and resume talks. Talks have been at a standstill since the Hanoi summit. Let me, sorry, where is it? I lost my paper. Okay. Yeah. The Hanoi summit failed to produce an agreement, even though the DPRK suggested suspension and eventual dismantlement of fissile material production at Yongbyon, monitored by the US or other outside parties in exchange for limited sanctions relief. Since the Hanoi summit, the DPRK has announced its position on the denuclearization talks, that the key to establishing a new DPRK-US relationship lies in the US withdrawal of its hostile policy toward the DPRK. If the United States persists in its hostile policy, it said there will never be the denuclearizations of the Korean Peninsula. If the Biden administration is serious about the denuclearization of the peninsula, it should take concrete action soon to resume talks for denuclearization. I'm sure that it is aware that the DPRK achieved its completion of its nuclear power during the US policies of strategic patience and maximum pressure. As long as hostile relations persist, doing nothing will only lead to the deterioration of mutual confidence and the chance of successful talks under the armistice state of the Korean War. So to break through the deadlock for meaningful and fruitful talks, I would like to suggest 3 points. First, ending the armistice state of the Korean War will create a momentum for breaking through the deadlock and confidence building for a successful talks toward denuclearization and lasting peace on the peninsula. In the Path to Peace report I mentioned earlier, the Korea Peace Now campaign recommends that the United States, the ROK, and the DPRK immediately conclude a fair and binding peace agreement that acts as a final settlement of the Korean War. A peace agreement to end the 7 decades of the armistice state would reduce the risk of nuclear war and facilitate talks on arms control and disarmament. Second, the US and ROK leaders also should keep the promise of suspending the US ROK combined military exercises One of the annual large-scale exercises will be in late August. Experts have proposed suspending the military exercise in exchange for a suspension of North Korea's nuclear and missile tests as possible reciprocal measures for confidence building between the US and the DPRK. Third, deployment of new weapon systems and military buildup will impede the Biden administration's stated policy of pursuing a practical approach for successful talks. It will also undermine building trust and people's support for the peace process. In his special address on May 10th, President Moon said the ROK-US alliance will be solidified through his upcoming summit with President Biden. I hope he didn't mean allowing the upgrade of the THAAD system or the deployment of new US weapon system in South Korea. The decision of the US and the ROK government to deploy the THAAD system in South Korea in 2016 and 2017 was undemocratic and undermined regional security. Experts have pointed out that the US military's assertion that the purpose of THAAD deployment in South Korea is to counter North Korea's missile threat doesn't make sense. Instead, it is commonly thought to be a part of the US military defense system to deter China. The villagers near the new US military base for the THAAD system have been protesting every day with peace activists and members of religious groups against the legal deployment. And recently, the US military has increased its pressure on the South Korean government to resolve this inconvenience. Due to the pressure, the South Korean government has deployed the police to allow US military vehicles with equipment for the THAAD system and materials for the basic construction to pass the village. Thousands of police used force to crack down on tens of protesters and prevent them from occupying the roads. These days, due to concerns about COVID-19 and social distancing, it is hard to counter the police's use of force. As the time issue, I will stop here and I will look forward to tonight's discussion further after the panel's speech. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And again, very sorry for the limited time. There was the input from Yoo Kyung-ko of Korea Peace Now and Korea Peace Appeal. Thank you for your analysis and updates. Now we will move to Sung-wook Yoon Sung-wook, who is a specialist in international politics and EU, and also working as a goodwill ambassador for peace in Korea. So Sung-wook, what is your analysis?
Thanks, Francis. Hello, everybody. And I think I have a kind of a different view on today's seminar because I'm working for the university and probably my analysis seems to be more like based on research, not like experience in this civil society. And today I would like to discuss the role of the European Union for the peace building process on the Korean Peninsula. Before discussing the main theme, I will briefly explain the dramatic changes of international and regional situations. As we have witnessed strategic great powers competitions between the United States and China seems to be deepening within East Asia and globally. What I am worried about most in these situations is that North Korean issue could be used as a leverage by two powers for their strategic competitions. This is not certainly helpful for peace building process on the Korean Peninsula. And also regarding the current situation of the Korean Peninsula, I diagnose it as deadlock minus alpha situations, which means that worse than the deadlock situation, especially after the collapse of the Hanoi summit. Although the United States' new policy towards North Korea has been announced under the Biden administration, it is still doubtful, at least for me, that North Korea could come back to negotiation table without any incentives or guarantees. Then, what can the EU do under these situations? Firstly, I have to say that the EU clearly identified its security objectives and its role as an inevitable global player. However, especially in Korea, probably in the world, it is very doubtful whether the EU is interested or have any intentions to be engaged in these issues on the Korean Peninsula in general and in North Korean issue in particular. We also know that the structure of the EU's decision-making procedure, especially in the security affairs, makes the EU more difficult to be a global player. Nevertheless, the EU should consider two factors I would like to focus on today: the capabilities and recognition. If the EU wants to be a global player, to be engaged in the Korean Peninsula peace building process. Let me start with a issue of capabilities, which is about whether the European Union has capabilities in dealing with the North Korean issues and also for peace building process. Personally, I believe that the EU could play its own role in easing tensions between two Koreas and in the process of peace building in the Korean Peninsula. This is because the European Union has never shown its interest or intention to be a military power. Rather, the EU has clearly identified its security goals of promotions of liberal values and sustainable development, effective multilateralism, and strengthening the international law. In that sense, the EU's participation in the global sanction to North Korea is not the only job the EU could do. The EU can be more actively engaged in North Korean issues in the areas of such as humanitarian aid, technical assistance, or initiating dialogues with North Korea. As we know, the EU's policy towards North Korea has been critical engagement since the emergence of second nuclear crisis. But we also know that this critical engagement policy has been highly vulnerable to political circumstances and nearly failed to achieve its goals. It means that the EU needs to consider setting up new policy towards North Korea. Then let me briefly explain why I believe the EU is deserved to be an inevitable player in the Korean Peninsula. The EU did a great job for Iran's nuclear agreement as a mediator, facilitator, and a go-between of a trust builder between Iran and the United States. In addition, the EU has made its efforts to keep the deal alive regardless of the US withdrawal during the Trump administrations. The EU publicly announced to be very proud of its role in Iran's nuclear deal and on the kind of reputation in conflict resolutions. Also, the EU and a couple of member states, such as Germany and Sweden, clearly expressed their intentions to help North Korea's nuclear negotiation with confidence based on their experience on Iran's deals. Then one question just come up to me naturally. What should be the EU do, or what should be the EU's next step? It is time for the EU to be more actively engaged in peace-building process in the Korean Peninsula, which contributes not only consolidating the EU's role as a global player to resolve conflict in a peaceful and diplomatic way, but also strengthening the EU's status in this region. For these purposes, I would like to suggest what EU could or should do. This is about recognition issues, which means how the EU can be recognized as a player, inevitable player in the peace-building process on the Korean Peninsula. Firstly, the EU should be recognized as a de facto international actor with a clear visions. In this sense, Brussels, the EU should start a debate on a new strategy on North Korea and the Korean Peninsula, and eventually adopt a strategic document. This document should include the EU's strong will as a civilian power that the North Korean issue must be settled in a diplomatic way through talks. And moreover, the EU should identify its objectives in the Korean Peninsula, should target areas that EU can make meaningful contributions, and should specify at which stage and how the EU can play its role. Secondly, as I mentioned before, the EU prepare and set up a new policy towards North Korea and the Korean Peninsula. A new policy should put the EU in a stronger position to contribute proactively to the maintenance of peace and stability in this area. One of the possible and desirable things to do for the EU is to restore a high-level political dialogue with North Korea, which was suspended since 2015. EU and North Korea political dialogue could serve as a kind of back channel for Washington and Pyongyang. The EU should be reminded that the EU has maintained its dialogue channel with Iran when maximum pressures and sanctions and even the military actions were seriously considered. Lastly, for today, it is time and desirable to set up a platform to share the EU's successful experiences in the integration process. Especially in Korea, we normally comes up with one question regarding the Korean Peninsula. What we are looking for between peace building on the Korean Peninsula and two Korea's reunifications. But whatever we choose, there is one common purpose, which is to establish a permanent peace on the Korean Peninsula. As we have watched throughout the European integration process, it could be very difficult to integrate the political field. In this sense, I strongly believe that it is necessary for two Koreas to initiate the process of economic integration step by step for the purpose of peace building. And I'm sure that this can be eventually as a fundamental step towards unifications. In this regard, EU's experiences and process of economic integration could provide lessons and implications. Let me suggest some examples. We have to think why the European Korean steel European Korean steel community was successful and became a cornerstone towards further European integration, but why not Kaesong Industrial Complex? And we also think how the member states of the European Union overcome conflicts of interest and disagreement among member states through talks and negotiation. How to harmonize rules and regulations based on the mutual recognition principles, how to establish and consolidate European identity, what kind of efforts the EU has made for solidarity, etc. This is very, very essential for two Koreas when they start initiate economic cooperation or integrations. So we have to understand what European integration tells us is that the fundamental goal of the European project is to establish permanent peace in Europe. And that's why it is time for two Koreas to set up policies to coexist by admitting differences and to minimize disparities and avoid marginalization in various areas. The EU can share its experiences and give consultations on these issues the EU has already experienced during the integration process. The role of civil society and NGOs can be extremely helpful in this field, especially. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sung-wook Yoon. That was input from Sung-wook Yoon, especially from different perspective and different analysis, but highlighting the potential role of EU as an important international player in Northeast Asia with the different values and different approaches, and leading to the initial step of economic integration, which will be very, very vital for lasting peace. Thank you very much. Now with that, can we move to Marie-Laure, covering Europe and Asia in GPAC?
Absolutely, thank you. And I will keep also my comments a bit short so we have time for discussion, if possible. So thank you so much. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Marie-Laure Poiret, and I work in the global advocacy team of the Global Partnership for the Prevention of Armed Conflicts, which is also known or widely known as GPAC. So it is my pleasure and honor to participate in this session of this year EAPF, to share the efforts undertaken by GPAC members to build sustainable peace on the Korean Peninsula. So I will start my presentation by giving first a very short description of the network approach of GPAC, before moving to GPAC's role in connecting Asia and Europe to engage in the Korean peace process. So first about GPAC, about the GPAC network approach. And by way of quick background, GPAC was founded in 2003 and is the world's largest global network of and led by local peace builders. So the network counts more than 200 civil society organizations that work or operate in the field of conflict prevention and peace building. And the network consists of 15 regional networks, including Northeast Asia. Really, at the core of GPAC's mission is the commitment really to link civil society with relevant local, national, regional, and international actors and institutions, so that together they can collectively contribute to the prevention of conflict. So ultimately, we firmly believe that conflict prevention initiatives need to be very much locally grounded and internationally supported, so that they can be sustainable in the long term. This is truly one of the main objectives of the advocacy efforts of GPAC, to truly meaningfully facilitate that engagement between local peace builders and national, regional, and global stakeholders, so that we can inform, if not influence, their policies and actions. Because we believe that, of course, global policies or policies in general should truly reflect and be inclusive of the need and challenges of local communities. So that's really about GPAC and how we function and how we work. Now, second, about the GPAC efforts in Northeast Asia. So the concept of a civil society dialogue process for the Korean Peninsula has always been a central goal of the GPAC network in Northeast Asia, and something that the entire actual network of GPAC recognizes as vital importance. So as described earlier by Ambassador Eng Sai-Tian, who is the chairman of Blue Banner, who is GPAC member in Mongolia, it is only after years of cautious engagement and network development that the GPAC network in Northeast Asia could officially launch the Ulaanbaatar process in 2015. But since then, since the last 6 years, GPAC Northeast Asia commitment to support civil society in fostering peace in the region has been consistent and therefore effort widely recognized. So a noteworthy example is the appointment of Mary Joyce, who is with us today, who is the GPAC Northeast Asia Regional Liaison Officer. Mary has been appointed Goodwill Ambassador for Peace on the Korean Peninsula in 2020 by South Korea's Ministry of Unification. So we're really proud and very excited about this development. And more globally, GPAC support the efforts of the Ulaanbaatar process and other GPAC-led activities in the region by creating this space I was telling about for information sharing and dialogue, especially with government and regional organizations. So now I would like to share 2 specific examples about our current work in Northeast Asia, if you will. 2 specific examples. The first one is GPAC steady engagement with the Korean National Peace Committee, or KNPC, who are a member, GPAC member in the Democratic People's Republic of Korea. And second, I would like to just briefly mention our current partnership with the European Union on a 3-year project in Northeast Asia. And this partnership started this year. So first, GPAC, really one of its main area of work is the amplification of our member expertise. We really want to develop the expertise of our members. And we do that by facilitating the exchange of experience and knowledge. And this is how we feel like by meeting with each other, our members learn from each other and they develop their capacities. So over the years, we coordinated many exchanges and learning programs for and with the Korean National Peace Committee, both in Pyongyang, but also in The Hague. So for instance, in 2018, 4 colleagues from Korean National Peace Committee visited The Hague to participate in capacity building session and also to engage with various international stakeholders based in The Hague. So they interacted with the Dutch Foreign Ministry, as well as the Organization for the Prohibition of Chemical Weapons or the International Criminal Court. And subsequently, the Korean National Peace Committee in November 2019 hosted a delegation of 7 GPAC members, including several from Europe, to Pyongyang. And during this visit, the first ever in-country conflict analysis training for DPRK citizens was held with a full day of seminar and workshops on concepts on human security, peace building, etc. So really, what does this mean? Well, these exchanges, they really demonstrate the unique role and added value of civil society in convening dialogues where government-led dialogue is impossible, including between Asia or impossible or difficult, including between Asia and Europe on issues related to peace building in and for Korea. So second, about our current partnership with the EU. As Professor Song-Hyuk Yoon said earlier, indeed, there is a great interest, I think, for the EU to be more invested in that region. And in 2020, and owing to our sustained effort in Northeast Asia, the EU invited GPAC to submit a proposal aimed at scaling up all the efforts of the Ulaanbaatar process for the next 3 years. So while the project objectives are to strengthen the position of civil society in Northeast Asia as a network, as well as create and secure space for active cross-civil society engagement and meaningful involvement of women and youth leaders, another really key focus will be to engage with and complement official, regional, and international processes, including that of the EU in the region. So this is this two-pronged approach, very much about civil society, but also engaging with other international actors and governments. So truly, despite the common understanding of the critical need for action for peace and denuclearization in Northeast Asia, and the urgent need to build peace on the current Korean Peninsula, the region is highly unrepresented in international peace building discussions. So this project that we're starting with the EU will aim at bridging that gap by building partnerships with governmental and intergovernmental actors, supportive of dialogue, and by learning also from other successful regional processes, such as the EU or the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, for instance. So in a nutshell, that's it. So I will conclude here by reiterating GPAC's commitment to pursuing its efforts in raising awareness first, but also reinforcing the interest in conflict prevention through dialogue on the Korean Peninsula, and to go beyond these silos, to create space to consider innovative and civil society-led approaches to overcome obstacles in the peace process.
Merci beaucoup, Marie-Laure. Thank you very much.
Merci, Francine.
Excellent. I'd like to highlight again how important, how marvelous it was that GPAC gained sustained recognition and trusty working relationship with the DPRK, and also this great potential of bridging EU and countries in East Asia with the civil society initiatives. I think this is a great potential. Much appreciation. Thank you very much. And our final speaker, let me introduce Soo-young Hwang from PSPD, People's Solidarity for Participatory Democracy. And in it, she represents a Center for Peace and Disarmament. For those who haven't met her, she's the most, most important person in peace movement in South Korea. She is one of the main actors in bringing forth what has been accomplished so far. So Soo-young as a final speaker.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. Hi, everyone. Nice to meet you all. And thank you for wonderful speeches of other speakers. And thank you for attending today's open space. Yeah, I am Soo-young from PSPD, and I would like to introduce our Korea Peace Appeal campaign and activities of civil society for peace on the Korean Peninsula. I will share my screen. Yeah, I would like to show some photos. Yeah, Yeah, Korea Peace Appeal is an international campaign that seeks to amplify voices calling for an end to the Korean War and a transition from armistice to peace beyond the Korean Peninsula and throughout the world. Last year, on the 7th anniversary of the Korean War, South Korean people gathered together to end the Korean War and sign a peace treaty with people power on July 27, 2020, which marked the 67 year since the armistice agreement. More than 360 South Korean civil society organizations and 7 major religious orders in Korea and international patron organizations like GPEC, IPB, and individual supporters launched the Korea Peace Appeal campaign. Our message is simple: 70 years is enough, and let's end the Korean War with people power. This is our campaign goal: build people's solidarity and common actions to end the Korean War, and gain support and participation of various governments and parliament for the Korea Peace Appeal, calling for a transition from armistice to peace, and launch and achieve negotiations between relevant governments to establish a peace regime. Our campaign, we will conduct the Korea Peace Appeal campaign until 2023, the 7th anniversary of the Armistice Agreement. The period of the war in Korean Peninsula was about 3 years. So then we thought, let's end the Korean War for 3 years. This is Korea Peace Appeal. I would like to share our activities. First, Korea Peace Appeal signature campaign. South Korean civil society organizations made 4 demands of Korea Peace Appeal through a long discussion. You can see here in the image. I think these are demands that everyone can sympathize with, and everyone can think these are necessary. And we will collect 100 million signatures of Korea Peace Appeal from people all across the world, and we will deliver them to the United Nations and to the governments of the countries involved in the Korean War, including South and North Korea, US, and China. This is our first plan. I would like to share more our various activities of a campaign. But because of the COVID-19 quarantine, nowadays it is difficult to conduct signature campaign actively. We are using QR codes to get online signatures in the street, and many religious people are also participating in the signature campaign. And we named every Monday Peace Monday, and have conducted a street signature campaign in every Monday. And people send signatures to us by mail, even from Japan, by international mail. And Korea Peace Appeal campaign conducts various activities. Last year, 2nd anniversary of Pyongyang Joint Declaration of 2 Koreas, we collected many photos calling for peace on the Korean Peninsula like this, and it was introduced to the media, to the Korean media, and English and Japanese. And these are photos of the peace shops participating in the campaign. Some cafes, libraries, and restaurants, and they posted campaign posters and to inform the customers about the signature campaign. There are 100 shops all over the South Korea. And some celebrities such as Korean actors, film directors, and singers are also joining us. They said that one of the writers said that we wish go further based on the permanent Korea peace. And we also organize wider support for the Korea Peace Appeal from the National Assembly and local government and local parliament in South Korea. 65 MPs joined the signature last month to mark the second anniversary of the Panmunjom Declaration. And over the 110 people, the head of local government and local MPs also joined the signature. In particular, many people from border areas such as Gyeonggi, Gangwon, Incheon province participated. One of them says, in the border area, we felt peace after the Panmunjom Declaration. It was confirmed that easing military tensions on the border could lead to substantial peace implementation. And we also hold discussions on pending issues related to peace on the Korean Peninsula and Northeast Asia. It is a place to open a public forum to share various opinions and critically review government policies and discuss alternatives of civil society. And we also hold online meetings with Japanese people to share our activities and opinions. People invite the Korea Peace Appeal campaign. Please invite us if you would like to discuss Korea peace issue or introduce our activities to your own group or network or organization. And also we sent a letter to the US President Joe Biden to call for ending the Korean War for peace on the Korean Peninsula. We are monitoring the policies of each government and announcing the opinions of the civil society. Finally, I would like to ask you to be a Korea peacemaker. Please widely circulate our signature campaign among your network, and please add campaign banners to your website, and you can download the signature sheet in our website, and there are various materials in our English website, and please be our international partner organization if you are in the civil society organization. And in July this year, around the day of Korean War Armistice Agreement, we plan to conduct International Korea Peace Action Week. We will suggest these actions to the International Peace Network. Especially Korea Peace Appeal campaign will ask government to make remarks at the UN General Assembly calling for end the Korean War formally. So please support our request and ask each government together. And we will conduct some kind of these sections. And yeah, this is the end of my presentation. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much, Soo-young. Thank you. So we are now enriched with all the 5 inputs. Thank you very much for the speakers. So far, we have one question. The question is, how do you navigate the legacy of anti-communism in South Korea in promoting peace between the 2 Koreas? So we have one question. May I invite 4 or 5 questions and comments? Please make it very short. And then I will return to the speakers to respond to those questions and comments. Now I'm opening to the floor. So any participants and even the speakers, do you have? Yes, Ms. Wang Daning, yes.
Yes, thank you. I have a question to the professor. Yes, Professor Yoon. Yes, my question is, can you be more specific on how, from your analysis and your understanding, how the EU can contribute to the end of 70 years Korean War?
Thank you very much. Please register that question, Professor Yoon. We will invite more questions and comments for the time. Any others? Yes, Dr. Eng Sai-Khan.
Yes, I also have a question directed to our Korean colleagues. I know I'm a lawyer, and I know that national law is very important. And I've read somewhere that there is also in South Korea national security law. I was wondering whether you are planning to change some of its provisions, because I think it is a law that was adopted, negotiated and adopted at the height of Cold War. What we're trying to do is now to change the situation. And so perhaps, some of the provisions of that law could be revised to reflect the tendencies of trying to get along among the two Korean nations. Thank you.
Thank you. So there was a question on the notorious National Security Act of South Korea. Any others, please? For the time being, I have one question. Is there any next step planned for Ulaanbaatar process for contributing to the diplomatic or other peace process in Korea? So I registered that question as a third one. What is the next step plan of Ulaanbaatar process?
Shall I respond now?
Or at the end, please wait for more questions. Any other comments or questions from the floor? Well, in that case, if there's no further questions and comments, then I'd like to ask Professor Yoon to respond first, and any other Korean colleagues, and GPAC to respond afterwards.
Thank you. Thank you for your questions. It is very difficult, but in many cases, and to the government and in the conference in Europe, I have argued that the EU should act more in the issue of Korean Peninsula peace process. And very briefly, if you look at the Iran's nuclear deals, there was a EU that even if the Trump withdrew the Iran's deal, the EU tried to keep the deal alive, as I mentioned before. And when I think about okay, there is a deal between North Korea and the United States on the issue of denuclearizations in North Korea, and there is a deal, for example, but there is a possibility that when the new government, either in the United States, might change their policy when we saw the case in the Trump administration. So there is kind of big powers to guarantee that the deal could be maintained even if there is anything happens. So I prefer that any kind of agreement should be made among various actors, as the EU insists, which means that a multilateral agreement, including South and North Korea, of course, including United States, Japan, Russia, and China, but the EU could be a special role as a mediator, as the EU did in the Iran's agreement. For example, the Moon's administration, Moon Jae-in, tried to be a kind of a mediator, But you can imagine that like the Moon met Kim Jong-un, that like he might explain or try to persuade Kim Jong-un to be on the table to meet President Trump, then try to persuade Kim Jong-un that South Korea can do something to persuade the United States to do something for North Korea. But South Korea cannot guarantee that these things can be done by the United States, and vice versa as well. So the European Union, as a not as a military power, but as a civilian power, can do better work, better jobs as a mediator or as a facilitator to proceed the negotiation. I think that could be the most important part for the EU. I believe that to do for the process of peace building on the Korean Peninsula.
Thank you, Sang-Wook. And now, Soo-young or Yu-kyung, who will respond to the question of National Security Act?
May I?
Yes, please.
Yeah, give some update on that. As I think you know well about the National Security Act and its role in South Korean society since I think it is over 7 decades of its birth in 1948, maybe 7, or before the liberation of the Korea under the Japanese rule. Anyway, recently there is a new movement to abolish the national security law, and there is a action to petition to bring this issue to the National Assembly. Over 100,000 people signed the petition to abolish the National Security Act, and it is kind of request to the National Assembly to discuss the special law to abolish the National Security Act. And some lawyers brought a lawsuit to the Constitutional Court on this National Security Act. So I hope there will be public discussion about how to deal with this legacy of the Cold War era. And about the question of the legacy of anti-communism in promoting peace between the two Koreas, I always talk about the scene when two leaders met in the Panmunjom in 2018. Many people in South Korea watched that, and they really, they really impressed, touched. Even they didn't remember after that what happened. They are ordinary people, but at that time they were very touched. The reconciliation, it has a power to make people generous on the conflict. But this kind of reconciliation and talks, and even between enemies, even between some long conflict countries, I think the power of this dialogue, reconciliation will reserve this our legacy of anti-communism or anti-capitalism or anti some things which people hate each other, divide our society. So I hope this peace movement will elaborate, will address this legacy, even it is slow or, yeah.
Thank you very much, Yu-kyung, on your positively noted account of that law. And finally, on the next steps of GPEC and Ulaanbaatar process, who would like to give you? I think that will be the final comment within the limited time. Who would like to respond?
Well, I can start, but I would like also to invite Mary, who is a very important person in the Ulaanbaatar process. First of all, I would like to say that one of the distinguished features of Ulaanbaatar process is that we started the process with an understanding that representatives of both Koreas would participate. We don't want, to give preference to one or another, and there is an agreement that Ulaanbaatar process will proceed with an understanding that both Korean nations would be represented, the NGOs would be represented. That's very important, I think. Unlike some others where some attend, the others do not attend. So this is an important thing. And we hold annual meetings focusing on 3 or 4 specific issues. And as I have already said, first is the Korean Peninsula related issues. The second is Northeast Asia nuclear weapon-free zone. The third, fourth would be, on the suggestion of members of Ulaanbaatar process. I think it's a very important step. Now we started our actions in 2015. Now it is time for us to look back and see what we were able to achieve and what we were not able to achieve, and to look again what we can do further in that sense. One of the things that we have started was a joint publication with the participation of representatives of NGOs. They don't represent the governments, so they have the opportunity to share their views, and it's very important in that sense. We also participated and organized also capacity building exercises. I think it was already mentioned by Marie-Laure that there was such an exercise, let's say, in Pyongyang, and then in Beijing we also had such things, and perhaps we will also be focusing of holding a capacity building exercise in Mongolia based on the themes, which themes the members of Ulaanbaatar process would like to focus on. I think that's going to be a very important thing. So it is a process. We're starting the process. We'll look back, and then we'll see what can be achieved better, and so forth. As Marie has already pointed out, the EU is also supporting our activities, and we hope that with the participation of EU and some other international organizations, we will be able to bring up our activities more. So this is what I can say at this stage. Perhaps we can also invite Mary to add to it. Thank you.
I give my last points to Mary.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
I will be very brief then, because I think Ambassador En Sai-han has really just shared some of the key points. My name is Mary Joyce. I'm the Regional Liaison Officer for GPEC in Northeast Asia, so working very closely with En Sai-han and Marie-Laure and many of the other people who are joining today. So I think the first thing I'd want to highlight is, as the ambassador mentioned, one of our principles is being inclusive in terms of the participation from both the DPRK and RRK, North and South Korea. So as it's not possible at the moment for participants from the DPRK to join these kind of online forums like we are now, unfortunately, we are still working with them to try and find ways that this can be possible. We're in contact with them through other means, at least once a week, having many different exchanging updates and discussions and so on. So we hope that within the coming months, even if it's not possible to have Ulaanbaatar process gatherings in person, that we can have some kind of more direct exchange and so on happening online. In the meantime, as mentioned, we are also looking at what we can continue to do with other members and so on in these formats until it's possible to meet in person in dialogue. At the same time, with the new support that's being confirmed by the EU, as has been mentioned as well, this is really hopefully going to help us offer more visibility to the project and more access to different policy discussions and policy makers, this sort of thing, but also for expanding the process as well. Because it has been something done on a very small scale with all of the different participating NGOs really using their own budgets and time for this. Now that we have this more stable support for the project, it will mean that we can really expand the participation, have more different groups involved, as Ambassador Ensaihan mentioned, have more training programs, have more youth-led organizations involved, women's groups, and so on. We really want to look at more partnerships that we can build as a result of this as well. So I look forward to hopefully working with many people who are on this call. And if anyone is interested to be involved in the future or continue the conversation, please reach out to us anytime. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary. Thank you. So that would be our summarizing comment of the session. We had wonderful 5 inputs covering from different prospects of DPRK-US relationship and the efforts of South Korean governments and potentiality of EU as a peace-building mediator in East Asia, as well as the great significance of the campaign, Korea Peace Appeal campaign, to end the war situation as a starting point of bigger peace-building process in the region. All in all, we have lots of work to do, and we need much more closer cooperation and more planning of working together. But please don't go while we are saying goodbye to each other, promising for the next session. Soo-young would like to share a music video about Korea Peace Appeal. So Soo-young, are you ready? So
yeah, I'm ready.
Watching this wonderfully made music video, I'd like to say goodbye and thank you to everyone, all the speakers and participants. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
한국이 이런 나라에서의 삶이 전쟁처럼 느껴졌다면 아니 그저 살아남길 비는 포로처럼 느껴졌다면 죽이지 않으면 내가 죽는다며 대신 죽을 누군가를 찾아 헤맸다면 그건 이 전쟁이 아직 끝나지 않았기 때문일 거야. 이해할 수 없는 뭔가를 없애버려야 할 것 같았다면 그래서 그걸 저주하는 일을 삶의 이정표로 삼았다면 자기는 걸릴 게 전혀 없단 듯이 감시의 눈길을 애써 외면하며 살았다면 그건 이 전쟁과 평생을 함께 했기 때문일 거야. 매일이 무서워서 무서운 줄 몰라 이 공포를 정의로 알고 살아. 우리 편이 아닌 죽음엔 무감하지만 언제 내가 또 적으로 몰릴지 몰라. 우리 이 전쟁을 끝내잔 약속을 하면 어떨까. 지금껏 살아보지 못한 평화가 찾아오길 원한다면 여기 서명해. 여기 서명해. 여기 지금 일단 서명해. 더 이상 기다릴 필요가 없어. 이 전쟁을 끝내자. 여전히 기지는 넓혀지고 사람들은 쫓겨나. 삶을 잃은 사람들은 살기 위해 결국 전쟁에 목을 매. 당해본 사람은 소리 지르지만 힘센 사람들은 그 입을 막아. 그래서 우린 이 전쟁을 모르는 척하고 살 수 있었던 거야. 군사경쟁 아닌 협력을 원해. 핵무기 없는 세상을 원해. 미워하며 사는 건 지겨워. 이 평화를 일상으로 가져오길 원해. 이 전쟁을 끝내자는 약속을 받아냈으면 좋겠어. 나부터 서명할게. 그리고 지금부터 전 세계에서 1억 명을 모을 거야. 스톡홀름 어필 2억 8천 명의 서명. 베를린 어필은 5억 명. 절대 많지 않아. 세상을 뒤집어 엎길 원하는 그런 마음들이 모인다면 70년의 분단, 70년의 냉전, 70년의 불안, 70년의 폭력과 아픔. 계속할 이유가 없으니까 여기서 끝낼 수 있으니까 여기 서명해. 여기 서명해. 여기 지금 일단 서명해. 더 이상 기다릴 필요가 없어. 70년은 그냥 너무 길어. 이 전쟁을 끝내자. 이 전쟁을 끝내자. 지금 여기에서 우리가 지금 여기에서 우리가 지금 여기에서 우리가 지금 여기에서 우리가
Bye. Thank you, everyone.
Bye bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye. Thank you so much. Great seeing you all.
Ora, thank you very much for having this session in the forum.
Thank you as well, Soo-young and Francis. Thank you.